Hey everyone, welcome to Those Were the Days radio and podcast show. This is Kwesi Talkin' Music. Today I'll be reviewing the 1974 album by Mandrill titled Madrillland. For those who need a bit of a refresher course on this band, they were based in Brooklyn, New York, and formed in 1968 by three brothers of Afro-Panamanian descent, Carlos, Lou, and Rick Wilson. The band released 14 albums from 1970 to 2020. Mandrilland, a double album, was their fifth and final release for Polydor Records. And here is my review for this highly influential album. Positive Thing Part 1. Opening up side A is this tune which is straight up funky and exudes cool. The groove is exactly what you'd expect from Mandrill, especially if you've listened to their previous output. The bass just keeps going and going. It puts you back in the middle of the 1970s, strutting down the street with a finely picked afro and your best pair of bell-bottoms and nicely shined platform shoes, while just going down to the corner mart for a gallon of milk in the hopes of catching the eye of the young cutie working at the cash register. The horns are perfectly in tune with everything going on around, and the lyrics in part 1 of this track are extremely funky and well-timed to the groove. It's amazing how this is the opener on the album. Love is a positive thing are lyrics that completely describe the feeling Mandrill is giving towards the listeners of this album. While they exclaim to stay up later in this track, they are letting us all know that we are in store for something really amazing. Positive Thing Part 2, Skying Upward, The Road to Love, and Armadillo. The rest of Side A is just an extended jam session of Positive Thing, with some notable solo work by keyboardist Claude Coffee Cave, guitarist Douglas Rodriguez, and percussionist Neftali Santiago. My favorite of these tracks is The Road to Love, which is basically an eerie interlude during the Positive Thing jam session. It sounds like this came out of nowhere, with its beautiful keyboard chord progressions as well as the lyrics sung by the Wilson brothers. I love how Side A concludes with Armadillo, while the closing of this track goes into a different type of calypso. Awesome piano, flute, and bass playing that finishes out the jam really nice. It's extremely well done and gets everyone ready for the other three sides. The Reason I Sing. So here begins side B, which I feel is the weakest of the four, but not by much. There are just two tracks here that I really don't connect to so much. And this is one of the songs that I don't. I mean, it's interesting because I don't dislike it, but I don't listen to it as much. It sounds like a track that Pharrell Williams wrote for a 1970s band, and that really isn't a horrible thing at all. This is definitely what I would call an experimental track by Mandrill. It showed how eclectic they were as a band, and in fact, this is a track that is difficult for me to classify into a genre. Extremely progressive and a little ahead of its time. I mean, I appreciate it, especially as it's a nice lead-up to a track that I feel is truly dynamite. Weevil the Swallow. Wow, I mean, put this track on when you're in the house cleaning and you'll instantly be in a great mood. Another progressive track, and this time very folksy and bluesy, with amazing lyrics and a guitar lick that's engaging. Horns that seem to be telling a story, and a bass that completes the experience. And wow, what an experience. And you know what? This won't be the first time that I rave about the emotions that this album exudes. I mean, you just feel so good by listening to this song. But with this song, you can feel you're somewhere southern, warm and humid. It's crazy how music can transport you to places that you can imagine, and this track does it so well. Khidja. And yes, this track used to be my absolute favorite on the album. It still ranks up there as one I put on all the time, so it probably still is, but this is one I meditate to on a monthly basis. It's extremely grounding. Close your eyes after a long day and try it sometime. It soothes your mind, body, and soul. The flute, keyboards, bass guitar, and percussion go extremely well together. And when the lyrics come in during the bridge, as little as they are, they really hit that nerve in a way that's hard to describe. It's just gorgeous. These guys were clearly on top of their game with this one, and the production value on this track is out of this world. True excellence. House of Wood. So here I must say that this is the weakest song on the album for me. I can understand why many people like it with its gospel and bluesy sound, but I never really took to it. Maybe it's because I was expecting a lot more Latin, jazz, funk, or whatever that Mandrill was known more for. But re-listening to this track for this review, I can appreciate it for what it brings. The musicianship is impeccable. It's quite obvious that these professionals had been at it for a long time, with their perfect sense of timing and knowing exactly what they were going for. And man, it certainly does fit in with the rest of this album, and is actually an excellent way to finish off side B. Drill in the Bush. So now we're on to side C of this impressive album, which is my favorite side. These 4 songs are amongst the strongest in my opinion, and it begins with something so tribal and fitting to the name Mandrill. Driven by the heavy use of percussive instruments, bass playing, and tribal lyrics, this dynamic track is one you must hear at least once in your life. It speaks to your inner being and will no doubt get you moving at least one part of your body. It's sheer genius what this track does to your soul, if you let it. El Funko. Perhaps the stankiest, funkiest track on this album, and that's saying a whole lot. The groove just gives you that perpetual stank face and will have you jamming in your room with nothing but your skivvies on. Guitar licks, bass runs galore, and outstanding drumming complete with some fun keyboard jamming and lyrics that sounded like they were just made up on the spot. This is pure funk at its absolute best. I just wish it had gone on a little bit longer than its 2-minute and 54-second runtime, but it is what it is. Love is Sunshine. So this was the club track from this album, and kind of interesting that they'd go with this one here, but it is excellent. I mean, it does make sense as it's probably the most accessible song from this whole set. I love how the lyrics of this particular track are extremely simple, but keep changing keys whenever is necessary. The band wasn't exactly known for its lyricism or singing ability, but their sound just seemed to fit right in where it needed to. With all of the elements that made them who they were present here in this track, it is truly sensational. Folks on a Hill. A masterpiece of a track right here. Bass playing by Freddie K. Solomon, drumming by Neftali Santiago, guitar by Douglas Rodriguez, and lyrics sung by the Wilson brothers. This one here is up there as one of my favorites from this album. Progressive funk, progressive rock, progressive jazz, progressive blues, all rolled up into a progressive soup of fusion right here. The guitar solo in the middle must have inspired many from all different kinds of genres. The keyboard solo is outstanding, as are the muted horn playing that decorate the song in the most perfect way. The clever lyrics on Jack and Jill as Folks on a Hill get me every time I hear this. This song is another must-listen from this album, and gotta say, it's a perfect way to close out the strongest part of Madrillland. Mini Suite for Duke. And now, we've come to side D, both awesome and a little baffling in my opinion. At first listen on this track, you aren't expecting nods to progressive art rock and classical music, but it all makes sense in the end. As 1974 was the year that Duke Ellington passed, this was a musical tribute to his legacy, and it's extremely fascinating. It jumps around and bends genres in such interesting ways that you cannot help but appreciate it. The Love Boaty ethereal middle section is my favorite section on this track. I wish there were more of this included somewhere on this album, but the feel it brings to the track is very much respected, especially as the song travels to its eventual chaotic conclusion. It's a brilliant song that may not be to everyone's liking, but I feel it's one of the most misunderstood pieces of music on this album. Cal-Ipso. A soul funk track that I'm not too fond of for some reason. Again, as with a couple of other songs that I don't connect with for some reason, I don't hate it. It just isn't one I'd listen to when I check this album out. The horns and singing seem to be the standouts on this track, which is probably why I'm not so much interested in it. Mandrill was known way more for its musicianship than its singing, though a future album of theirs is amazing in that regard. I do like the percussive instruments in this track, as well as the saxophone solo in the middle. Solid work. After the Race. And here we go, one of my absolute favorites. This is another one of those that you can just close your eyes and chill out on your bed with the headphones on. As with Khidja, I advise anyone listening to it to immerse themselves into the music, which could possibly take you to another plane of existence. You don't need to get high to enjoy it, because the music will and should get you high enough. Just try it, especially with this track. Another song from this album that's unclassifiable, and I mean, is it progressive rock, progressive funk, progressive fusion? It really doesn't matter, to be honest. The musicians are fully engaged in this, and it's possible that it's their magnum opus. If this isn't my favorite track from Mandrilland, it's pretty darn close. A must listen. Buy yourself with a clear mind if possible. This one will completely change your mindset. Lady Jane. And what an interesting way to close this album out. The premise of this track is that there's this dude who is love bombing his girl, which sounds kind of creepy and gross because you don't hear the girl speak at all. But it's spoken over some awesome Latin calypso in the background that makes you feel like you're on the streets of New Orleans on a hot and steamy night in August. The music in the background is amazing, but unfortunately, I'm really not a fan of the speaking. To each their own, I'm pretty sure there are people who love this song. I'm not one of them, but I appreciate it for trying something different. And that was my review of 1974's Mandrilland by Mandrill. Thank you for listening, and please like, share, comment, or subscribe. We'd love to hear from you. Take care, and see you all again on the next episode of Talkin' Music.